Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Tonight we're out in the fuel shed and I'm going to cover a topic that I get asked about quite a bit, and that is how to start off setting up one of these WVO design centrifuges. So we're going to go over the extreme model tonight because, well, that's what I've got sitting here. The basic model is pretty simple. As far as assembly and everything goes, they're identical, but the wiring is a little different. It's a very simple setup on that one though. This one's a little bit more confusing, so we're going to walk you through it. Let's get started. As I said, assembling the basic and the extreme unit are pretty well identical. The only difference here is going to be the motor itself. The motor mounting and everything is the same. So when you get the unit, it's going to be completely disassembled. The legs will be off of it. The housing will just be bare. The motor will be off of it. The legs, they bolt on all the way around the housing. You got 2 bolts in each leg. There's 3 legs in total, and you've got the little rubber isolator feet that bolt on, and they've got mounting holes here. This allows the unit to move a little bit, but not cause rattles and everything else. It isolates vibration. If you're running the heater kit that our extreme package comes with, it's going to come with the housing here, bolts here that bolt on through the leg mounting holes, and this bolts directly to the housing itself. You'll have your hoses and all of your fittings. Over here, we've got the main clean oil outlet. Now, they do not come set up like this. This is something I've set up on my own and decided I really like this. It's a nice feature to have. So, I highly suggest if you're going with a WVO design centrifuge to set you up a P-trap like this. It's really simple, hardware store plumbing. I would go with black iron, not galvanized. I've not had issues with the galvanized, but people claim that you can or will over time. You could also do stainless like the factory fittings are. But yeah, this is all 3/4 NPT. So just come out, down a good ways, over and back up. It'd be nice to have a way to drain this every now and then. I'm going to change this out and put another 90 and a valve on it to make it easier to drain this trap. And you want to come back up, but you want to be shorter here than you are over here. What that's going to do is oil will always be in this U down here, which keeps water vapor from coming through this trap and over into whatever your clean container is. Otherwise, as was seen when I first set this unit up, you can get condensation and water vapor ending up in your clean drum, which is kind of counterproductive. So adding the P-trap eliminates that, and it forces all of the moisture to come out of the sludge drain over here. Now, like I said, this is the sludge drain. It's another 3/4, 90 with a hose barb. You want to run this into a container that is at least as big as your supply container. Why is that? Well, if you're not around while running this unit and for some reason power goes off, well, the bowl's going to come to a stop. And once you've run this once, you'll understand what happens. When the bowl stops, the bowl drains, and the bowl drains out this sludge drain right here. So all the water and contaminants that are in here, if they're in liquid form, they're going to come out here, as well as any oil that is still in the bowl. Well, if your power's off and everything stops, but you have no way to shut this off because you're not here or you don't have an automatic closing valve, all that oil is going to drain out of your sludge drain. Just a cautionary note so you don't end up with a massive flood of oil all over your workspace. Run a sludge container the same size or larger than your supply tank, or they do make automatic closing valves. So when power is applied to them, they open, they stay open, but they're spring loaded. So if power is lost, they automatically close. You can run one of those as well. I do not, but I run this outside typically into a 275 gallon tote that I've got outside, so I don't have that issue to worry about. But anyways, my plumbing setup is going to be a lot different than most people's because I do all the small batch testing and everything like that. Typically speaking, you're going to have a container elevated. This is just a 55 gallon drum. You're going to want a ball valve and a gate valve. The gate valve controls flow a lot better than a ball valve does. That's a lot more precise. Once you get it set, you can just shut the flow off with the ball valve, and that keeps you from having to fiddle with the gate valve as much. You still will need to adjust it from time to time to adjust your flow rates and everything, but that's fine. All of my hardware is 3/4. Yeah, you can get this stuff at any hardware store. There's nothing special about it. 3/4 black pipes, 3/4 ball valves, 3/4 inch pipe nipples. The hose that I've been running on my supply side to the heater is just a braided, chemical rated hose. I haven't had any issues with it. This side of the heater does get hot, but not hot enough to damage the hose, so I'm not too worried there. I do run a drain valve down here on this side of the heater, which makes draining this a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. If you ever need to do any work to the system, you can drain the heater down and then you can disconnect these hoses and you won't have oil going everywhere. So I think I've still got a mess in here, but that's okay. Climb up here. Oh yeah, still got a mess from the last batch I ran. So I'll try to get this out of the way so you can see. But as you can see, yeah, we've got pudding pretty well. It is thick and nasty, and it's not draining because it is so thick. So yeah, you'll run into that from time to time. I usually, when this happens, I'll usually pull this bowl out. It is, let's see here, a 7/8 nut down in here that locks that cone in place, which I think I'll take it out for you. There's a little collar that sits this on the motor shaft. I'm gonna pull the bowl out so you can see what's going on over there. Now you can kind of see how the housing is set up. The sludge drain is over here, which it is isolated from the clean oil. The clean oil that comes up and is flung out of the top of that bowl, hits the side of these walls, and then runs down to the clean drain, which comes out down there. But as you can see, my setup is not perfectly level, so I get some sludge underneath this that just sits here. When I rework my shed, I'm going to change that. Now, you can see the 4 motor mounting bolts there. This here, slide this up, is the collet setup that attaches the bowl to the motor. It's a simple little setup. It's a simple little setup that works really well. Just slides on the motor shaft. When this tightens down, the outside collar expands out and locks onto the bowl. As far as how the collar and the seals and everything are concerned, set that up by the manual. I'm not going to take this unit apart to show you how to put them in. You drive in a seal, you lock on a collar, you add some grease. It's very simple to do. And when you set the bowl back down in here, you want to have roughly 1/8 of an inch, roughly 1/8 of an inch between the bottom of the bowl and this lip right here. So it will sit all the way down and sit on top of this, and that will tear the bowl up. So as you're tightening this nut down, just lift up on the bowl a little bit, give yourself a little air gap. When you tighten it down, it's going to pull that bowl down a little bit more. So just make sure you leave that up enough. And when you spin the bowl by hand after the fact, it doesn't make any weird noises, rubbing noises, anything like that. And you should be good to go. That's pretty well it as far as the housing is concerned. I'm going to link the manual to how to set this up in the description of the video. Make it easier for you guys to find. The actual assembly is very simple. I can't get too much more particular or in-depth than that because all of your systems will be different. You'll lay out the plumbing differently, so on and so forth. this is just how I'm doing it, and it's working for me. It might not work for you, but set it up the best way that works for your setup. Like I said, P-trap, a wise thing to do, works great. I'm really happy with that upgrade. But yeah, and your heater flow. The inlet is on the bottom. There's a reason for that. If your oil flow ever stops and you're not around to shut this thing off, the element will stay submerged in oil. That will prevent the element from burning up. It's on a thermostat, so it will cycle it off when the oil gets so hot. Won't cause a fire. It's a safety thing. So be sure your oil inlet is on the bottom of the heater. You could probably even come in down here, but it's marked here. This is the way to take it. I've done a short video on how to wire this heater up. I am running 110 volts on my setup because that's what I've got out here. So to wire in 110 volts, your hot or black wire comes up to this side of the thermostat. The wire will be black, so it's black to black here. Neutral or white comes down to the actual heating element, just like shown here, white to white. And then I've got a ground over here, which I just ground to the case of the heater. It's really simple. Now you can see how these little spacers are laid out. This here changes if you convert this to 230 volt. Now, I'm not doing that, but I will show a picture right about now of this setup and how it's supposed to be for a 230 volt connection. It's pretty simple to set it up, but yeah, like I said, here's my ground. I put it to a case screw. You can even put it down here if you want, if you've got a machine screw that'll fit these little holes. Not super critical, but grounded. You do want this grounded to something metal. Wiring size for this, let's see, what do I have on here? 16 gauge 3 conductor. It's been plenty for this. This wire doesn't get hot or anything like that. And this thing runs pretty hard. I usually run it around 200 degrees. So yeah, just simple 16 gauge wire. Bigger is better in this case. So if you want to upsize that wire, that is fine. But yeah, just make sure your connections are secure and you're grounded here. Now, onto the motor itself. This is what's going to be different between the basic and the extreme unit. The basic unit, you wire power directly to the motor. There's a switch on the motor itself. Flip a switch, it turns the motor on. That's all there is to it. On the extreme version, this is a 3-phase motor, 230 volt 3-phase motor. It comes with and requires a VFD, a variable frequency drive, that controls the motor. That's what gives us our speed. Without this, we could not run this motor unless you've got 3-phase power and yada yada yada. But you need the controller for the speed control. Now on the motor, you've got 3 power conductors because it's a 3-phase motor. They're labeled 1, 2, and 3. The connections for this motor do not matter as far as their orientation or connection points on the controller itself. So all you need is 3 conductors hooked up to this motor securely, and those 3 conductors come right up to the bottom of the controller. These 3 screws right across the bottom, T1, T2, and T3. That's your motor control right there. Power feeds 1, 2, and 3. Does not matter orientation, none of that matters. The controller will handle it. So then you also have a ground screw down in here. I run a separate 12 gauge ground up to the ground stud on the bottom of the controller. And that is pretty well it as far as the motor wiring side. Like I said, very simple, don't overthink it. Now, the top side of this, I'm running a 110 volt controller. As you can tell, power is on to this unit. The controller is off, so there's no power going down here. On the 110 volt, you've got LR and NS at the top. These are your lines coming in. Hot or line, which is black, and then N, which would be neutral, is white, and then your ground. All that is very simple to set up. as far as the 230 volt model, both of your hot wires, you're going to have two if you're in the States, 220 volt feeds coming into both sides of this and a ground wire. That's all you're going to feed to this. So there'll be two hots and a ground, no neutral. If you're in Europe or anywhere else that has single line 230 volt power, it's the same setup, but you're only going to have one 230 volt connector or conductor going in here and your ground. I'll have to check in the manual for that and see if there's a neutral on the European side. That's outside of my realm because, well, I'm not in Europe, so I'm not used to how their power is set up. But this takes 230 volt in on the 230 volt model in either way, either a single line or 220 volt, 115 volt lines in the US. So, like I said, 230 volt model, both of your hots come in right here, 1 and 2, and then your ground wire. And that's pretty well it as far as wiring the controller up. It's very simple, but I know from personal experience and from talking to quite a few of you, the manual is fairly vague on some of this. And there are different controller models out there, so if you've got a different controller model and you're having issues with it or having trouble wiring it up, reach out to me and I can get that information for you. This is the one I have experience with, but like I said, I can do the legwork for you. That's no problem. Just reach out and we'll get you the information you need to get you up and running. As far as the settings on this, it is important to be set up exactly how this is set up. Your top, here, let's see if I can pop this off. There we go. Your top right here, you want at 75. Your 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, you want that at 75. On your Excel decel in seconds, you want that set to 5. And frequency, you want to be at plus 40. That's it. Set all the jumpers how the manual describes, which let's see. Don't know if you'll be able to see those or not. If you can't see them, I can't see them from my angle. I will post a picture up in this video right now showing how those jumpers should be set. With that said, this here is the little speed controller. Got power on, and our motor's not spinning yet because the speed knob is all the way down. As you turn this knob up, the motor will start to turn. And the higher you turn it, the faster that motor will spin. But without the bowl and everything in it, I'm not going to let it run up. But yeah, so there's your basics for wiring and setting up the controller, the heater, putting this unit together. It is not rocket science by any means, but I know for a fact that the pictures in the manual of the controller do not match the wording in the manual. So I wanted to cover that for sure as far as how to set this up. If you set those knobs wrong, like the XL decel rate for the controller for the motor, if you set that wrong, you're going to get an overload condition on the controller. It's going to fault out and not work. So yeah, set it up the way I showed. It's very simple. Yeah, I think that pretty well covers it. But yeah, I am going to wrap this video up here. I don't want to make it too long. If you guys got any specific questions or what have you as far as setting these units up, running them, what have you, feel free to reach out anytime. You can reach out through email. That's notsograndgarage@gmail.com. You can hit up the comment section. I try to answer all the comments that I get as quickly as I can, but you know, I'm typically running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to keep up with everything. So I do my best to do that. But yeah, with that said, I'm going to wrap this up here. If you've got any comments, questions, complaints, drop them in the comment section below. If you would, hit that thumbs up button. It helps us out quite a bit and doesn't cost you anything. If you want to support the channel, there's a PayPal account set up. The link to that is in the description of the video. You can use SuperThanks as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We appreciate you watching.